And it was not long after Lu had got the fine from the sons of Tuireadh that the Fomora came and landed at Skedna. The whole host of the Fomora were come this time, and their king Balor of the strong blows and of the evil eye, along with them. And Bres and Indech, son of Dedalnan, a king of the Fomora, and Elehan, son of Lobos, and Gol, and Ingol, and Octrialach, son of Indech, and Elehan, son of Delbeh. Then Lu sent the Dagda to spy out the Fomora, and to delay them till such time as the men of Ireland would come to the battle. So the Dagda went to their camp, and he asked them for a delay, and they said he might have that. And then to make sport of him, the Fomora made broth for him, for he had a great love for broth. So they filled the king's cauldron with 4 times 20 gallons of new milk, and the same of meal and fat. They put in goats, sheep, and pigs along with that, and boiled all together. And then they poured it all out into a great hole in the ground, and they called him to it then, and told him he should eat his fill, the way the Fomora would not be reproached for want of hospitality the way Bres was. We will make an end of you if you leave any part of it after you, said Indech, son of Dedalnan. So the Dagda took the ladle, big enough for a man and a woman to lie in the bowl of it, and he took out bits with it, the half of a salted pig, and a quarter of lard a bit would be. If the broth tastes as well as the bits taste, this is good food, he said. And he went on putting the full of the ladle into his mouth till the hole was empty. And when all was gone, he put down his hand and scraped up all that was left among the earth and the gravel. Sleep came on him then after eating the broth, and the Fomora were laughing at him, for his belly was the size of the cauldron of a great house. But he rose up after a while, and heavy as he was, he made his way home. Indeed, his dress was no way sightly, a cape to the hollow of the elbows, and a brown coat, long in the breast, short behind, and on his feet brogues of horsehide, with the hair outside, and in his hand a wheeled fork it would take to carry 8 men, so that the track he left after him was deep enough for the boundary ditch of a province. On his way he saw the battle-crow, the Morrigu, washing herself in the river Unius of Connacht, and one of her 2 feet at Uladechna to the south of the water, the other at Loskin, to the north of the water, her hair hanging in 9 loosened locks. And she said to the Dagda that she would bring the heart's blood of Indech, son of Dedalnan, that had threatened him to the men of Ireland. And while he was away, Lu had called together the druids and smiths and physicians and lawmakers, chariot drivers of Ireland, to make plans for the battle. And he asked the great musician Magh what could he do to help them. It is what I can do, said Magh. Through my power I can throw down all the mountains of Ireland on the Fomora, until their tops will be rolling on the ground. And the 12 chief mountains of Ireland will bring you their help, he said. And I will fight for you, Slieve Leig, and Denda Ulad, and Benny Borcha, and Brí Rúri, and Slieve Bladma, and Slieve Snechte, and Slieve Mish, and Blai Slieve, and Nemachan, and Slieve Macha Belgadon, and Segish, and Cruachan Egel. Then he asked the cupbearers what help they could give. We will put a strong thirst on the Fomora, they said, and then we will bring the 12 chief lochs of Ireland before them, and however great their thirst may be, they will find no water in them. Derchlach, Lach Luinech, Lach Orbson, Lach Ri, Lach Mete, Morlach, and we will go, they said, to the 12 chief rivers of Ireland, the Buas, the Boyne, the Bana, the Nem, the Loy, the Shannon, the Muid, the Slegech, the Sour, the Fian, the Rurtech, and the Sheer. And they will all be hidden away from the Fomora, that way they will not find a drop in them. But as for the men of Ireland, they said, there will be drink for them if they were to be in battle for the end of 7 years. And Figel, son of Mamos, the Druid, was then asked what he would do, and he said, Here is what I will do. I will cause 3 showers of fire to pour on the faces of the army of the Fomora, and I will take from them 2/3 of their bravery and their strength. I will put sickness on their bodies, and on the bodies of their horses. But as to the men of Ireland, he said, every breath they breathe will be an increase of strength and of bravery to them, and if they were 7 years in the battle, they will never be any way tired. Then Lu asked his 2 witches, Bechele and Janin, what power can you bring to the battle? That is easy to say, they said. We will put enchantment on the trees and the stones, the sods of the earth, till they become an armed host against the Fomora, and put terror on them and put them to the rout. Then Lu asked Carpra, the poet, son of Etain, what could he do? It is not hard to say that, said Carpra. I will make a satire on them at sunrise, and the wind from the north, and I on a hilltop, and my back to a thorn tree, and a stone and a thorn in my hand. And with that satire, he said, I will put shame on them and enchantment. That way they will not be able to stand against fighting men. He then asked Goibniu the smith what he would be able to do. I will do this, he said. If the men of Ireland stop in the battle to the end of 7 years, for every sword that is broken, and for every spear that is lost from its shaft, I will put a new one in its place. And no spear point that will be made by my hand, he said, will ever miss its mark, and no man it touches will ever taste life again. And that is more than Dole, the smith of the Favora, can do, he said. And you, Credna, Lu said to his worker in brass, what help can you give to our men in the battle? It is not hard to tell that, said Credna. Rivets for their spears and hilts for their swords, and bosses and rims for their shields. I will supply them all. And you, Luchta, he said to his carpenter, what will you do? I will give them all they want of shields and of spear shafts, says Luchta. Then he asked Gian Kech, the physician, what he would do, and it is what he said. Every man that will be wounded there, unless his head is struck off, or his brain or his marrow cut through, I will make him whole and sound again for the battle of the morrow. Then the Dada said, those great things you are boasting you will do, I will do them all with only myself. It is you are the good God, said they, and they all gave a great shout of laughter. Then Lu spoke to the whole army and put strength in them, so that each one had the spirit in him of a great king or a great lord. And when the delay was at an end, the Favora and the men of Ireland came on towards one another till they came to the plain of Magh Tuireadh. That now was not the same Magh Tuireadh where the first battle was fought, but it was to the north, near Esdara. Then the two armies threatened one another. The men of Ireland are daring enough to offer battle to us, said Bress to Indech, son of Dedomnan. I give my word, said Indech, it is in small pieces their bones will be if they do not give in to us and pay their tribute. Now the men of Jaya had determined not to let Lu go into battle, because of the loss of his death would be to them, and they left 9 of their men keeping a watch on him. On the first day, none of the kings or princes went into the battle, but only the common fighting men, and they fierce and proud enough. And the battle went on like that from day to day, with no great advantage to one side or the other. But there was wonder on the Favora on account of one thing. Such of their own weapons as were broken or blunted in the fight lay there as they were, and such of their own men as were killed showed no sign of life on the morrow. But it was not so with the Tuatha Dé Danann, for if their men were killed or their weapons were broken today, they were as good as before on the morrow. And this is the way that happened. The well of Slania lay to the west of Magh Tuireadh, to the east of Loch Arbach, and Gian Kech and his son Ochtriel and his daughter Armed used to be singing spells over the well and be putting herbs in it. The men that were wounded to death in the battle would be brought to the well and put into it as dead men, and they would come out of it whole and sound through the power of the spells. And not only were they healed, but there was such fire put into them that they would be quicker in the fight than they were before. And as to the arms, it is the way they were made new every day. Goibniu the smith used to be in the forge making swords and spears, and he would make a spearhead by 3 turns. And then Luchta the carpenter would make the shaft by 3 cuts, and the 3rd cut was a finish. He would set it inside the ring of the spear, and when the spearheads were stuck in the side of the forge, he would throw the shaft and the rings. That way they would go into the spearhead and want no more setting. And then Credna the brazier would make the rivets by 3 turns and would cast the rings of the spears to them. And with that they were ready and they were set together. And all this went against the Favora, and they sent one of their young men to spy about the camp and to see if he could find out how these things were done. It was Ruadan, son of Bress, and of Bridget, daughter of the Dada, they sent, for he was a son and grandson of the Tuatha Dé Danann. So he went and saw all that was done and came back to the Favora. And when they heard his story, it is what they thought, that Goibniu the smith was the man that hindered them most. And they sent Ruadan back again, and bade him make an end of him. So he went back to the forge, and he asked Goibniu would he give him a spearhead, and then he asked rivets of Credna, and a shaft of the carpenter, and all was given to him as he asked. And there was a woman there, Crone, mother to Fianlug, grinding the spears. And after the spear being given to Ruadan, he turned and threw it at Goibniu, that it wounded him. But Goibniu pulled it out and made a cast of it at Ruadan, that it went through him, and he died. Bress, his father, and the army of the Favora saw him die. And then Bridget came and keened her son with shrieking and crying. As to Goibniu, he went into the well and was healed. But after that, Octrialach, son of Indech, called to the Favora, and bade each man of them bring a stone of the stones of Drinnis, and throw them into the well of Slania. And they did that till the well was dried up, a cairn raised over it. That is called Octrialach's cairn. And it was while Goibniu was making spearheads for the battle of Magh Tuireadh, a charge was brought against his wife. And it was seen that it was heavy news to him, and that jealousy came on him. And it is what he did. There was a spear shaft in his hand when he heard the story. Ness, its name was, and he sang spells over the spear shaft, and any one that was struck with that spear afterwards would burn up like fire. And at last the day of the great battle came, and the Favora came out of their camp and stood in strong ranks. There was not a leader or a fighting man of them was without good armor to his skin, and a helmet on his head, a broad spear in his hand, a heavy sword in his belt, a strong shield on his shoulder. And to attack the army of the Favora that day was to strike the head against a rock, or to go up against fighting a fire. And the men of Jaya rose up and left Lu and his 9 comrades, keeping him. And then they went on to the battle, and the Midir was with them, and Bovderg and Giankecht, and Bav and Macha and the Morrigu called out that they would go along with them. And it was a hard battle that was fought. For a while it was going against the Tuatha and Nuada of the Silver Hand, their king, and Macha, daughter of Emmas, fell by Balor, king of the Favora. And Casmail fell by Octrialach, and the Dagda got a dreadful wound from a casting spear that was thrown by Celyn, wife of Balor. But when the battle was going on, Lu broke away from those that were keeping him, and rushed out to the front of the men of Jaya. And then there was a fierce battle fought, and Lu was heartening the men of Ireland to fight well. That way they would not be in bonds any longer. For it was better for them, he said, to die protecting their own country than to live under bonds and under tribute any longer. He sang a song of courage to them, and the host gave a great shout as they went into battle, and then they met together. Each of them began to attack the other. There was a great slaughter, and laying low in graves, and many comely men fell there in the stall of death. Pride and shame were there side by side, and hardness and red anger. There was red blood on the white skin of young fighting men, and the dashing of spear against shield, and sword against sword, and the shouting of the fighters, the whistling of casting spears, and the rattling of scabbards was like harsh thunder through the battle. Many slipped in the blood that was under their feet, and they fell, striking their heads one against another. And the river carried away bodies of friends and enemies together. Then Lu and Balor met in the battle, and Lu called out reproaches to him. There was anger on Balor, and he said to the men that were with him, "Lift up my eyelid till I see this chatterer that is talking to me." Then they raised Balor's eyelid, but Lu made a cast of his red spear at him that brought the eye out through the back of his head, so that it was towards his own army it fell, and 3 times 9 of the Favora died when they looked at it. And if Lu had not put out that eye when he did, the whole of Ireland would have been burned in one flash. After this, Lu struck his head off. As for Indech, son of Dedomnan, he fell and was crushed in the battle. Blood burst from his mouth, and he called out for Late Glass, his poet, as he lay there, but he was not able to help him. Then the Morrigu came into the battle, and she was heartening the Tuatha to fight the battle well, as she had promised the Dagda. She took the full of her 2 hands of Indech's blood, and gave it to the armies that were waiting at the fort of Unius, and it was called the Fort of Destruction from that day. After that it was not a battle any more, but a rout, and the Favora were beaten back to the sea. Lu and his comrades were following them, and they came up with Bress, son of Elahan, to guard him. And he said, "It is better for you to spare my life than to kill me, and if you spare me now," he said, "the cows of Ireland will never go dry." "I will ask an advice about that from our wise men," said Lu. So he told Magh Tuireadh, more brechach of the great judgments, what Bress was after saying. But Magh Tuireadh said, "Do not spare him for that, for he has no power over their offspring, though he has power so long as they are living." Then Bress said, "If you spare me, the men of Ireland will reap a harvest of corn every quarter, But Malchina said, "The spring is for plowing and sowing, and the beginning of summer for the strength of corn, and the beginning of autumn for its ripeness, and the winter for using it." "That does not save you," said Lugh then to Bress. But then, to make an excuse for sparing him, Lugh said, "Tell us what is the best way for the men of Ireland to plow and to sow and to reap." "Let their plowing be on a Tuesday, their casting seed into the field on a Tuesday, and their reaping on a Tuesday," said Bress. So Lugh said that he would do, and he let him go free after that. It was in this battle Ogma found Orna, the sword of Tuireadh, a king of the Fomora, and he took it from its sheath and cleaned it. When the sword was taken out of the sheath, it told all the deeds that had been done by it, for there used to be that power in swords. And Lugh and the Dagda and Ogma followed after the Fomora, for they had brought away the Dagda's harp with them, that was called Wetna. And they came to a feasting house. In it they found Bress and his father Elichan, and there was the harp hanging on the wall. And it was in that harp the Dagda had bound the music so that it would not sound till he would call to it. Sometimes it was called Dur de Blah, the oak of two blossoms, and sometimes Cor Cecher Cuan, the four-angled music. And when he saw it hanging on the wall, it is what he said: "Come summer, come winter, from the mouth of harps and bags and pipes." Then the harp sprang from the wall and came to the Dagda, and it killed 9 men on its way. And then he played for them the 3 things harpers understand: the sleepy tune, the laughing tune, and the crying tune. And when he played the crying tune, their tearful women cried. Then he played the laughing tune till their women and children laughed. And then he played the sleepy tune, and all the hosts fell asleep. And through that sleep the 3 went away through the Fomora that would have been glad to harm them. And when all was over, the Dagda brought out the heifer he had got as wages from Bress at the time he was making his dun, and she called to her calf. At the sound of her call, all the cattle of Ireland the Fomora had brought away as tribute were back in their fields again. And Cech, the druid of Nuada of the Silver Hand, was wounded in the battle. He went southward till he came to Carn Corlslebe, and there he sat down to rest, tired with his wounds and with the fear that was on him, and the journey. And he saw a smooth plain before him, being full of flowers, and a great desire came on him to reach that plain. And he went on till he came to it, and there he died. And when his grave was made there, a lake burst out over it, over the whole plain, and it was given the name of Loch Ceh. And there were but 4 men of the Fomora left in Ireland after the battle, and they used to be going through the country, spoiling corn and milk and fruit, and whatever came from the sea, till they were driven out at one Samhain night by the Morrigu and by Angus Og, that the Fomora might never be over Ireland again. And after the battle was won and the bodies were cleared away, the Morrigu gave out the news of the great victory to the hosts and to the royal heights of Ireland, to its chief rivers and its invers. And what she said: "Peace up to the skies down to the earth under the skies, strength to everyone. And as to the number of men that fell in the battle, it will not be known till we number the stars of the sky, or flakes of snow, the dew on the grass, or grass under the feet of cattle, or the horses of the son of Lear in a stormy sea." And Lugh was made king over the men of Jaya then, and it was at Naas he had his court. While he was king, his foster mother Talcha, daughter of Mamor, the great plain, died. Before her death she bade her husband Duach the Dark that he build the fort of the hostages in Tewar to clear away the wood of Cuan. That way there could be a gathering of the people around her grave. So he called to the men of Ireland to cut down the wood with their wide-bladed knives and billhooks and hatchets. Within a month the whole wood was cut down. And Lugh buried her in the plain of Media, and raised a mound over her that is to be seen to this day. And he ordered fires to be kindled, keening to be made, games and sports to be held in the summer of every year out of respect to her. And the place they were held got its name for her, that is Talchin. As to Lugh's own mother, that was the beautiful Ellen, she came to Tewar after the battle of Magh Tuireadh, and he gave her in marriage to Tagd, son of Nuada. And the children that were born to them were Myrna, mother of Finn, the head of the Fianna of Ireland, and Tuireann, that was the mother of Bran. After Lugh had held the kingship for a long time, the Dagda was made king in his place, and Lugh went away out of Ireland. Some said he died at Uisnech, the place where the 5 provinces meet, and the first place there was ever a fire kindled in Ireland. It was by Midde, son of Bra, that he was kindled, for the sons of Nemed, and it was burning through 6 years. It was from that fire every chief fire was kindled in Ireland. But Lugh was seen again in Ireland at the time of Conchuar, and the men of the Red Branch went following white birds southwards to the Boyne at the time of Cuchullin's birth. And it was he came and kept watch over Cuchullin in his 3 days' sleep at the time of the war for the bow of Cuilne. And after that again he was seen by Conn of the 100 battles, and this is the way that happened. Conn was in Taoiseach one time, and he went up in the early morning to the wrath of the kings at the rising of the sun, his 3 druids with him, Maul and Bloch and Wiche, and his 3 poets, Achain and Corb and Kesern. And the reason he had for going up there with them every day was to look about on every side. That way, if any men of the Sidhe would come into Ireland, they would not come unknown to him. And on this day he chanced to stand upon a stone that was in the rath, and the stone screamed under his feet that it was heard all over Taoiseach and as far as Breggia. Then Conn asked his chief druid how the stone came there and what it screamed for. The druid said he would not answer that till the end of 53 days. At the end of that time Conn asked him again, and it was what the druid said. The Lia Fell is the name of the stone. It is out of Falius it was brought, and it is in Taoiseach it was set up, and in Taoiseach it will stay forever. And as long as there is a king in Taoiseach, it is here will be the gathering place for games. And if there is no king to come to the last day of the gathering, there will be hardness in that year. And when the stone screamed under your feet, he said, the number of the screams it gave was a foretelling of the number of kings of your race that would come after you. But it is not I myself will name them for you, he said. And while they were in the same place, there came a great mist about them and a darkness, so that they could not know what way they were going. They heard a noise of a rider coming towards them. It would be a great grief to us, said Conn, to be brought away into a strange country. Then the rider threw 3 spears at them, and every one came faster than the other. It is the wounding of a king indeed, said the druids, anyone to cast at Conn of Taoiseach. The rider stopped casting his spears on that, and he came to them and bade Conn welcome and asked him to come to his house. They went on then till they came to a beautiful plain, and there they saw a king's rath and a golden tree at its door. Inside the rath a grand house with a roof of white bronze. So they went into the house, and the rider that had come to meet them was there before them in his royal seat. And there had never been seen a man like him in Taoiseach for comeliness or beauty or the wonder of his face. And there was a young woman in the house, having a band of gold on her head, and a silver vessel with hoops of gold beside her, and it full of red ale, and a golden bowl on its edge, a golden cup at its mouth. She said then to the master of the house, Who am I to serve drink to? Serve it to Conn of the 100 battles, he said, for he will gain 100 battles before he dies. And after that he bade her to pour out the ale for art of the 3 shouts, the son of Conn, and after that he went through the names of all the kings of Ireland that would come after Conn. And he told what would be the length of their lifetime. And the young woman left the vessel with Conn, the cup, the bowl, and she gave him along with that the rib of an ox and of a hog. 24 feet was the length of the ox rib. The master of the house told them the young woman was the kingship of Ireland forever. And as for myself, he said, I am Lugh of the Long Hand, son of Ellen.